The first tool that I'm going to use is called Shape Mode. Shape Mode will allow you to increase and decrease the level of the terrain under the receptacle. You can increase the size of this to suit your needs, and then left mouse button will increase, whereas the right mouse button will decrease. It's worth noting that there is a water plane that exists throughout the entire level, which is always at the same point. So if you dig down anywhere and you reach this plane, it will always be the same anywhere on the map. If you don't want water in your level, it's recommended that you don't dig down too much. Better to dig up than to dig down. These tools, or this tool, is good for shaping out a rough terrain. I want this game to focus on a small area of the map, so I would want to block it off with a natural mountain range so the players cannot run too far away from where I want them to do, because I want to deliver a story and they don't get that story if they run to the end of the world. Now, as you can see, it would take a long time to build a mountain range with this one tool, which is where the next tool comes in. The next tool is called Level Mode. Level Mode works by calculating the average height of the terrain under the receptacle. If the receptacle was held over this peak, the average terrain height would be high. If the receptacle was held underwater, the average terrain height would be low. And then pressing and holding the left mouse button levels the terrain under the receptacle to the average height of the terrain that was underneath it to start with. As long as the left mouse button is held down, this can be moved to create a flat surface to that level. Similarly, if it was on top of the peak, it could create a higher mountain to this diameter of the receptacle, regardless of what terrain's underneath it. It should be noted that if I let go of this mouse button now, the next time I press it, it will calculate a new terrain height based upon the average height of the terrain under the receptacle. But I want to carry this mountain range on at this height, and so I will need to use Stored Level Mode. Now in Stored Level Mode, it will remember the last height I used, and no matter where I click, it will bring the terrain to that height. And so I can link up the mountain range without having to guess or acquire that level again. I can just paint on my map where I want my boundary to be, and we'll say this is the boundary for our little game. Got a little bit of water, a little bit of hill, and a large mountain range surrounding the player area. If we then go into the scene as the player might see it, we can see that it is too tall for the player to traverse across, but it's also quite unseemly with large, sharp, jagged bits. And even though the player should never see the top, there's jagged bits up there as well, and we'll deal with that now. This brings us nicely into the Blend tool. The Blend tool, unlike the Level tool, will get information from the height of the terrain under the receptacle, but it will smooth out the terrain under there in relation to the terrain next to it under the receptacle, rather than dramatically alter the landscape. And by that I mean it will attempt to very slowly find the average and smooth out any rough corners that you might see. Now, as you can see, the jagged, jarring lines smooth out a little under the receptacle. It's more noticeable down here. If you can decrease the size of this, you can see that the sharpened edges are being reduced in favour of a more softer curvature. This is more natural and helps to create a more realistic looking level, because you'll find in real life edges aren't common. Even in mountain ranges, you'll never really find sharp edges. You'll find sharp precipices or crags or cracks, but not so much so with right angles and perfectly smooth geometry. It is rough, but it is never uniform. So running a smooth modifier, or the blend tool, across the sharpened bits allows you to keep your natural barrier to the world without it looking unnatural. Now, even the engine itself, this is too big of an incline and the texture stretched, so by smoothing it down we're creating more geometry for the textures to use, and so it creates a much nicer, smoother barrier while still allowing us to have a barrier at the edge of the world. I will do this for the rest of it and come back to you. I will do it, but in a greater scale so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So by using a larger receptacle on a bigger view, I can influence more of the world at any one time. Getting in there with a small receptacle is a great way of fine-tuning details, but if I just want to flesh out a landscape first, and to do that you need a large receptacle and a wide facing camera. So as you can see, just going around the edges of this, I can work out all those jagged edges, and so from a player's point of view it's smooth, it's natural. That's not natural. There we go. Always come to your player's point of view, because this is what they will see. It can look hideous from this side because your player is never going to be here. You can see it in some games where you can accidentally fall through the world and things don't have undersides, or there's no polygons on the reverse of things that the player was never meant to see. It's because you don't need to spend time making things look nice that the player will never see. You want to spend your time making the things that the player is going to see look nice, because if the players manage to escape the world, then that's their business. There we go. Let's work this out a bit more. This is like a natural little pool at the end of the mountain. There we go. Bring it up a bit. Now, that's that tool, which brings us nicely to a final tool called ramp mode. Now, if we increase this little hill here, like that, and then leveled it off, like that, yeah. But I wanted to build something here and have the player be able to access it. I could use this tool to create a series of increasing increments, or I could use this tool. This tool requires a little bit more from the developer because it requires 2 clicks instead of 1. If you press and hold the left mouse button at one point and then drag it to another point in the map and release, it will create a smooth gradient from point A to point B, only under the receptacle. As you can see, the areas outside of the receptacle are very jaggy, have no blending at all. We can use our blend tool with a smaller receptacle to smooth out these features to create our natural ramp in the terrain, like so. Oops, too far. There we go, like that. So. And on this side, there we go. That's nice. Now it's good practice to look at it from every angle, because your players will. Players get everywhere. You've all been players, I expect. Players will get everywhere in your map, and so you can't just leave the back here thinking the player's not supposed to go there, because if the player can go there, they will go there, and then they'll see. So you just want to smooth that out as well. You could make it meet the rock, or you could have it as a kind of a almost separate hill, but use your blend tool as much as you like. If you wanted to add a bit more land, just add it in there and then blend it in. Oops. And then blend it in with its surrounding areas to get a nice soft gradient. No sharp bits, no edges. There we go. Like that. Just get it from every angle you can. Okay? And that's nice. Okay? We'll like this. So the player can come up here, up to the top of this hill, for whatever reason you have for wanting the player to do that. Now, next we'll talk about terrain.